You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey! Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Thursday, November 20th, 2014, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a great show for you today, but before we get on to it, what's up with the NFL? We got the DEA scoping out some of the team doctors in the NFL, and the most recent thing I heard, they're not going to play the Buffalo Bills New York Jets game in Buffalo this weekend because they've got feet and feet and feet of snow in Buffalo. What, we don't play football in the snow anymore? Guys can't hit each other. They got to wear pink in October, and now they don't play in the snow. What has happened to my beloved NFL? Just kidding, folks. I know that the snow going on in the northeastern parts of the country right now is incredible. Feet and feet and feet of snow. Roads and cities and schools and institutions and firms all closed down. People battening down the hatches. If you're up there in the snowy country, all snug in your home listening to the show right now, we hope that you stay warm and you hope that you stay safe. Here's hoping also that you get some warmer weather pretty soon and some of that snow starts to melt. All right, on today's show, we have got a great guest joining us, the head of Colorado NORML, the executive director, Lenny Freeling, who's also a speaker with Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. He's a retired municipal judge from Colorado and now the head of Colorado NORML, also a board member of National NORML. We're going to get his take on 2 years of marijuana legalization in the state of Colorado, as well as some very interesting news that we're going to break regarding the Colorado Bar Association, so stay tuned for that. Also on the show today, we have got time for a radical rant. Comes real close to home here, where Oregon legislators are trying to subvert the will of the people with respect to Measure 91, our marijuana legalization initiative. Some really chilling questions being asked by legislators to the Oregon Liquor Control Commission in their very first meeting that just took place recently. We'll tell you more about that in the radical rant. Also on the show today, we're going to go behind the headlines where doctors are making buku bucks by drug testing seniors for drugs like heroin, cocaine, and PCP, and then billing that to Medicare. Your tax dollars and my tax dollars are going to drug test grandpa for PCP. We'll tell you all about that in Behind the Headlines, some great reporting from the Wall Street Journal. Also today, we'll have time for some drug war data mining. I'm going to give you a basic lesson on Microsoft Excel and some of the formulas and tricks you can use on elections to quickly get some number crunching done on election day the next time that comes around. So stay tuned for that quick little lesson. But we start things off right after this first break with the 420 Radio News, where we'll give you the details on how the legislators in Oregon want to change the medical marijuana program now that there is legalization. Washington State's tax revenue is much higher than originally predicted. Missouri might skip medical marijuana and go straight to legalization. The IRS recommends that tax preparers not be punished for working with legal marijuana businesses. And 2 sad stories in the middle of the country of people being busted for medical marijuana trying to help their grandparents. Still some sad stories all across this country as legalization rolls on here in the West. We still have so much further to go. Thanks for your support in this mission of bringing marijuana education to the people 24 hours a day via 420radio.org. If you can become a VIP member to help support our costs, we'd really appreciate it. Check out 420radio.org/donate. And if you're a company that'd like to advertise, check out 420radio.org/advertise. We're back with the 420 Radio News right after these messages.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio, your ticket to Seattle Hemp Fest.
Hey, what's up? This is Killer Mike, one half of Run the Jewels, and I'm telling you, November 23rd through 27th, you need to be at Cannabis Cup. I did it last year, and I got so high, I can tell you what color Jesus' furniture is. I got so high, I kissed the sky twice. I got so much enlightenment, I know Buddha's last name. Do you feel what I'm telling you right now? The people are great. You don't have to search or call your sketch-ass dealer who won't call you back. You don't have to go lurking through the hood to find good smoke. You need to get out of the country. You've been sitting on your block too long smoking weed. Get out and have an adventure. See you at Cannabis Cup, November 23rd through 27th. Yeah.
Drug Truth Network Cultural Baggage, replaying Wednesdays at 11 Pacific on 420radio.org.
Hey, this is Willie Nelson, or Normal. And I smoke pot and I like it a lot. I learned a long time ago that marijuana is a lot safer than alcohol. There's nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. It's time we stopped arresting and started respecting those who smoke marijuana responsibly. To learn what you can do to help, contact Normal at norml.org or call toll-free 888-67-NORMAL.
It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available daily on our website at 420radio.org. Now, here's Russ Belville with your marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. This is your 420 Radio News for Thursday, November 20th, 2014. Can we do away with the Oregon medical marijuana program if we're going to legalize marijuana? That was the question asked by Republican State Senator Fred Garrod in the first meeting between the Oregon Liquor Control Commission, tasked with regulating marijuana under Measure 91, and the state legislature. Garrod doesn't see why the state would need to spend money on two separate regulatory systems with two sets of personnel. He thinks recreational stores could sell medical marijuana strains. He'd also like to lower the amount of marijuana a household could possess. Measure 91 set that limit at 8 ounces. Democratic State Senator Lee Beyer thinks the Measure 91 vote shows Oregonians' support for legalization, not necessarily the specifics of Measure 91. His assumption is that most voters, quote, didn't pay a heck of a lot of attention, end quote, to read all the fine print in the proposal. Washington's legal recreational marijuana market is bringing in more tax revenue to the state than originally predicted, state officials said Wednesday. The most recent revenue forecast released by the Economic and Revenue Forecast Council shows that the industry is expected to bring in more than $694 million in state revenue through the middle of 2019. A previous forecast in September had that projection at about $636 million. About $237 million is expected for the next 2-year budget that ends mid-2017, and $415 million more is expected for the 2017 through 19 budget biennium. So far, the state has issued 86 retail marijuana licenses and 70 stores have opened. As of this week, revenue from total sales of recreational marijuana, including between producers, processors, and products sold by retailers, totaled more than $40 million, with the state receiving more than $10 million in excise taxes, according to the State Liquor Control Board. In a move that may be seen more often in coming years, pro-pod advocates in Missouri want to skip the medical marijuana phase and go straight to legalization. Show Me Cannabis, a Missouri marijuana activist group, filed the petition last week to put a legalization initiative on the 2016 ballot. To earn a place on the ballot, Missouri Secretary of State Jason Kander has to provide his approval. Then petition backers can launch a drive to collect the 165,000 signatures from registered voters. The group's director thinks they can do it, and he's not alone. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch editorial board published an article on November 13th making its case for legalization. They reference a 2013 ACLU report showing that blacks are almost 4 times more likely to be arrested than whites for marijuana in Missouri. The numbers get worse when you look at St. Louis, where the disparity in the city was a whopping 18-1. On Thursday, an advisory council for the IRS recommended that tax professionals who help state-recognized legal marijuana businesses, quote, will not be considered unethical, will not be targeted for audit, end quote, or otherwise penalized simply because pot is illegal under federal law. The tax agency estimates that legal recreational cannabis businesses in Colorado will gross $1 billion this year. Its report said some tax preparers in that state are concerned they could lose their federal licenses by working with such enterprises. Quote, tax professionals who give that advice need assurance that they will not be adversely affected by the fact that the business is illegal under federal law, end quote, said the IRS. It does not appear that any tax preparers have got into trouble over the years merely for working with a legal marijuana business, but CPA groups have been talking with federal officials about providing some sort of formal protection. While marijuana legalization rolls on in the West and medical marijuana expands in the Northeast, citizens in the middle of the country are still facing cruel punishment. In Pennsylvania this week, a 65-year-old woman who said she sold marijuana to help raise several grandchildren after her daughter died has been sentenced to 15 to 30 months in state prison. She pleaded guilty in October, telling a Butler County judge she sold as much as 100 pounds of marijuana a year for more than 4 years. And in Illinois, a 40-year-old man is facing felony charges with a possible 6 to 30-year sentence for supplying his 92-year-old grandfather with cannabis oil 4 times a day in an attempt to treat the elderly man's prostate cancer. The grandfather has since passed away. This has been your 420 Radio News for Thursday, November 20th, 2014. I'm Russ Belville. .420 Radio, your ticket to the High Times Cannabis Cups.
Salut mes amis, je m'appelle Marie-Jeanne et je vous invite à joignez-vous à l'équipe de High Times afin de célébrer la meilleure marijuana du monde lors de la 27e coupe annuelle du cannabis à Amsterdam du 23 au 27 novembre prochain. Pendant 5 jours, les membres du jury pourront participer à des séminaires, découvrir de nouveaux produits et voter pour leur variété de cannabis préférée retrouvée dans les meilleurs cafés de la vie. Les membres du jury auront aussi la chance de voir et d'entendre Action Bronson, Revolution et d'autres formations lors de la concert annuel de la Coupe. De plus, jeudi le 27 novembre, ne manquez pas la remise du prix du meilleur cannabis au monde par l'équipe de High Times. Découvrez le plaisir de la marijuana en toute liberté. Venez participer avec High Times à la Coupe du cannabis à Amsterdam. À bientôt!
Despite strong public support for medical cannabis, decriminalization, and legalization in Georgia, the state spends $121 million every year to arrest, prosecute, and imprison Georgians for simple possession. Each year, the state of Georgia spends less on driver services, agriculture, and forestry combined. What else can $121 million a year do in Georgia? With that much money, the state could hire and keep 3,000 more teachers, improve roads and bridges, provide tax relief for small businesses, repair aging sewage systems, or lower taxes. But right now, that's millions of dollars of your tax money wasted on failed enforcement. Tell your representative you're tired of wasteful spending and ask them to end cannabis prohibition. Join the conversation at www.peachtreenormal.org. Peachtree Normal is a proud affiliate of NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws.
Welcome back, everyone. 14 after the hour, and time for us to go behind the headlines, where the Wall Street Journal has this incredible report entitled "Doctors Cash In on Drug Tests for Seniors and Medicare Pays the Bill." And it tells this terrible fraud that's going on to us U.S. taxpayers in the Medicare system, where doctors, pain specialists largely, are ordering costly advanced drug tests for hard drugs such as heroin, cocaine, and angel dust to the seniors that they are treating. It's an amazing story here, and the way that this works, first of all, some statistics for you. Medicare's spending on 22 different high-tech tests for hard drugs hit $445 million in 2012. $445 million of taxpayer money spent for hard drug tests for senior citizens. That's up 1,423% in the past 5 years. The program spent $14 million on drug tests for PCP alone. And according to the Wall Street Journal story, Sue Brown, a laboratory director in Brunswick, Georgia, said she has never seen someone over the age of 65 test positive for angel dust in 25 years. Well, not surprising. Hell, man, I'm a professional in marijuana reform. I couldn't tell you where to find angel dust. For God's sake, where's a 65-year-old man gonna find it? But they did a profile of one particular doctor. Guy's name was Dr. Robert Wadley. He's in Raleigh, North Carolina. He started doing high-tech drug tests in his office. And based on those tests, the drug tests accounted for 82% of his Medicare payments in 2012. 4 out of $5 that he got from Medicare for his clinic came from these expensive high-tech drug tests on senior citizens. And he made no effort to conceal it. Dr. Wadley said, quote, "Urine drug testing is how I pay the bills," end quote. Back in 2011, Dr. Wadley launched a new firm called Avutox, LLC, that routinely tested Medicare patient specimens for more than 36 separate drugs, with a bill for each drug separately. Avutox was paid on average $1,265 per Medicare patient, nearly double the average of 108 other labs. It was the 10th biggest recipient of Medicare drug test payments, $7.3 million, and Dr. Wadley received $1.4 million for drug tests on his own patients. Now, why is this happening? Well, once again, it's the law of unintended consequences. Prior to about 2010, Medicare would pay these doctors for simple drug tests, like the little pee on a strip kind of drug tests. Now, you got to understand, in drug testing, there's usually two different levels. There's one level, a very cheap and simple test that can usually detect the metabolites of certain drugs. And then there's the more expensive test you give, the gas chromatography type of test that you give once you've failed the simple test. Then they say, okay, let's be sure, and let's do the more advanced test to corroborate what we found in the simple tests. But 4 years ago, Medicare started capping the payments on those simple tests. The doctors had been billing $20 for each test, like for meth or for benzos or whatever. Medicare capped the payment at $20 per specimen and then put a $100 cap on the more complex test. Now, what happened then is once they put the cap on the simple drug tests, the doctors then scrapped doing any of the simple drug tests and started ordering the more advanced second level drug tests because Medicare hadn't put any caps on those. The doctors switched to these because they had fewer billing restrictions, and mostly what we were talking about was the mass spectrometry, the gas chromatography and such. Medicare pays separately for each high-tech test. A cocaine test, they'll pay $21. A hydrocodone test like Vicodin or Lortab, they'll pay $29. For ecstasy, it'll pay $25, and so forth. Despite the fact that even if you count marijuana, only about 1 out of 1,000 seniors is going to test positive for it. 1 out of 1,000, and that's if you count pot. And the data on this are clear. 2007, 2008, and 2009, the simple drug tests, there were about twice as many of those as there were the high-tech tests. In 2010, when the law changed, it was even. The same number of high-tech tests to simple tests. By 2011, it was more than twice as many high-tech tests. By 2012, it's almost 4 times more high-tech tests. And again, their testing, it runs anywhere from $20 to $30, and Medicare would pay $172.89 for a test of ecstasy, benzos, opiates, amphetamines, PCP, hydrocodone, and cocaine. One major drug test biller, a doctor in Massachusetts received $2.8 million in drug test reimbursements from Medicare in 2012, more than any single doctor. This waste must stop.
Hey, this is great, man.
Tommy Chong. Tommy Chong was recently booted off of Dancing with the Stars, but the day after, I got a note from his PR firm wanting to book him for an interview. So folks, stay tuned. We'll keep you posted. Follow @RadicalRuss on Twitter. I'll let you know when Tommy Chong will be on the Russ Belville show next. It's 4:20 in Denver. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. .420 Radio, turning red states and blue states green. Hey tokers and tokettes, Radical Russ here for the Cannador, a practical solution to keep herbs from drying. The Cannador is the perfect airtight storage system for your fine herbs, from the half-inch thick walnut and cherry wood construction, clear top perforated jars for storage, and the humidity bead system that keeps your herbs at a perfect 65% relative humidity. I keep all my herbs in the Cannador, and you should too. Check out Cannador.com for more information. Cannabis Network Radio, replaying Wednesdays at 12 Pacific on 420radio.org. Get.Buzz. .Buzz is the internet platform that fuels community interest, excitement, and new experiences. .Buzz is the premier online destination for internet users seeking the latest news on a variety of topics. .Buzz appeals to groups active in blogging, communications, journalism, advertising, and marketing. .Buzz offers registrants a stronger alternative to the shrinking namespace of existing top-level domain names, such as .com, .net, and .org. Get your name now at get.buzz. Arguing for the end of adult marijuana prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It is even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more in this edition of Drug War Data Mining. Welcome back, everyone. 22 after the hour. And in the Drug War Data Mine today, I just wanted to take some time to play around a little bit with Microsoft Excel, a tool that I find invaluable when crunching numbers in the Drug War Data Mine. There's all sorts of data out there, and we've covered them here in this segment, but sometimes you need to take that data from the net and mess with it a little bit in Excel to get what you want. So I wanted to show just some basic techniques. First of all, let's suppose that you've got an election coming up and there's a particular vote that you want to track. So you might have a measure and how many yes votes and how many no votes that measure might get. For an example, let's say that we've got Initiative 1, we'll call it, and this would be an initiative in any old state, doesn't matter where, we're just pretending here. And as you calculate the votes, you might find that the votes, you want to know what the percentage was, the winning percentage. So let's just put in a fake number for votes here. Let's say we got 87,051 votes, just to pick a number. And for no votes, let's say it was 68,564. Again, we're just making up numbers here. And what you'd want to know is what is the win percentage on that. Excel allows you to make pretty simple formulas that can determine these sorts of things. And trying to find a percentage is a very, very common thing that you might have to do. Finding a percentage just means taking the number that you want a percentage of and dividing it by the total. Now, in Excel, the number we want the percentage of is how much did we win by? That would be this cell here, B2, right? And then we want to divide it by the total number of votes to find the percentage. That would be whatever you get when you add B2 and C2, if we could add those two numbers together. So the way you do that in Excel, as you do with any formula, you start off with an equal sign. That says, hey, Excel, we're about to tell you a formula. Now, you can type this in manually if you like, but I always find it easier to use the mouse because then it's very unlikely I'm going to make a typographical error. Remember that we wanted cell B2 and to divide that by the total of B2 plus C2? That's easily doable if we click here. After we've typed the equal sign, we'll click on what we want, cell B2, and notice how that fills in B2 for you and kind of highlights which cell B2 is. Now you know you're not going to make a mistake. Then to do your division, you're going to do a slash. That's division in Microsoft Excel. The next part's real important. We can't just take B2 plus C2 at this point, because the order of operations means that it's going to do division first, then addition. If we just went with B2 plus C2, what we'd end up with is B2 divided by B2, and then we'd add on C2, and that wouldn't really tell us what we want. We need that total to be figured out first, and to do that, you can use parentheses. Start with a parenthesis, and then go get B2 by clicking, type a plus sign, and then go get C2 by clicking, and then close the parentheses. The parentheses tell Excel, hey, you need to add this up first. And then when you've got that added up, use it to divide into B2. When we press enter, we'll get our answer. And so what we know now is this fictional initiative 1 got 55.93% of the vote. Now, when you start off with Excel like this, though, maybe you'd like these numbers to look a little prettier, look a little nicer, right? You can easily do that. Highlight the two numbers that you'd like to show, in this case, the vote numbers. It'd be nice to see them with commas, right? So we can, thousands and millions and all that kind of stuff. So there's a nice little button, and let me just adjust the screen here a little bit so you can see it. Oops, get that. There we go. There's a nice button up here on the Excel ribbon that looks like a comma. And you can highlight your two numbers and then just click that comma, and it'll give you the thousands you're looking for. It also gives you 2 decimal points, which really doesn't make a lot of sense when you're talking about votes. You can't have half a vote. So you can reduce the number of decimal points with another handy little button right up here. It looks like little zeros and an arrow, and it's called decrease decimal. Click that twice, and now we're down to just the thousands that we want to see. Similarly, we can do a percentage here. In the win percentage, there's a button right up there that looks like a percent sign. Click that, and you'll get the percentage. Now, Excel's going to round that up to 56%, but if you want to see some decimal points, there's another increase decimal button up there. Click that a couple times, and you'll see that the winning result was 55.94%. We'll do more Excel tricks in drug war data mining in future episodes, so stay tuned.
420 Radio. Tune in, turn on, get highly educated. Are you a hypocrite? If you live a closeted cannabis lifestyle, you are. Read about 7 people living a closeted cannabis lifestyle who are on the verge of coming out in The Hypocrites by Mara K. Eaton. Available at areyouahypocrite.net. You can purchase the book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, also available on iTunes. Check out Mara K. Eaton on Facebook as well. Learn more at areyouahypocrite.net. Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Very effective. Check out LushLEDlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you.
One of the most disturbing elements of the Prohibition War is how it's made police the enemy of otherwise law-abiding cannabis consumers. Fortunately, one group of police officers knows the futility of prohibition and reaches out to educate the community and current law enforcement. Today, the Russ Belville Show visits with another speaker from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition with one clear message. Cops say legalize drugs.
Welcome back, everyone. Half past, and as usual, every other Thursday, we visit with a law enforcement professional who says we ought to legalize all drugs. And joining us again on the telephone, we've got Leonard Freeling. He's the executive director of Colorado NORML, a former Lafayette municipal judge in Lafayette, Colorado, and a practicing attorney. And talking about a guy who wears a lot of hats, and a very nice one in his picture there. Leonard, welcome back to the show.
Dr. Radical Russ, how are you?
They gave me an honorary doctorate when I wasn't looking.
I call people by what I think they deserve, and sometimes the choice of words is different.
Well, I'm glad I got doctor. There's some other adjectives they could have picked that might not have been so flattering. Welcome back, Leonard. We're glad to have you here on the show. And, you know, as of this election now, we've gone 2 years in the state of Colorado with marijuana legalization. There was a bunch of election results where they tried to, or I guess they did, ban pot shops and raise taxes. What's your take on marijuana legalization 2 years in now?
Well, we had to shut the state down. You probably read that in this morning's Times. We had to shut the state down. The Capitol has collapsed in on itself. All of the roadways are a problem because all the bridges have now collapsed. And the aliens that we can no longer keep out are crawling down the streets. We're just hoping the National Guard and the federal government can come back in and save us from ourselves and this impending doom, impending disaster that I'm seeing all around me.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know anyone over the age of 8 that isn't a daily smoker, and they're all switching to heroin last week. So it's really been a pretty rough ride out here. Everyone's stolen all the money because it was all cash. So the actual tax collections have been they owe us money.
I think somehow Kevin Sabet has hacked into our phone line here.
Or Orson Welles.
Yeah, something like that. Now, Colorado is running quite smoothly, and I saw an estimate that it's going to be a $1 billion market there before we're done this year.
A very smart friend of mine whose specialty is mathematical analysis came up with a number that since January of 2011, it's been a 1.1 billion, that's B as in Bud, $billion business. And that's without, they have a new name for it. We used to call it the money multiplier. So without taking the money multiplier into account, where 2-3 year period, $1.1 billion.
That is just amazing. And of course, those of us in Alaska and Oregon who've just passed marijuana legalization, we're looking forward to that kind of, or at least some tax revenue coming in. It'll be a lot better than zero for sure. How about these localities, Leonard, that have passed these high taxes and are trying to ban pot shops? Is there any activity happening at the state level to maybe rein that in, maybe have more of a coherent statewide policy?
Oh, that's a fabulous question, and that's why the pause there. Let me take it in little pieces, but go through each little piece quickly. What we're seeing on the local ordinance level, city by city, and as you know, Colorado is the only real strong home rule state in the country. Our cities can have more power than in any other state. Cities are grabbing power, sometimes appropriately, odor violations, sometimes by claiming to be able to make medical patients register their personal 6-plant grows with the city. They're ignoring the Constitution. Pueblo has had an effort that NORML is fighting, so far so good, knock on joint, that NORML is fighting, where Pueblo there for a while was trying to figure out how to ban even the personal 6-plant grow, which is what I have always seen as the saving grace, the saving clause, whatever you want to call it in the constitutional amendment. At the end of the day, if the government screws it up so much that I don't want to just go to the store, I can grow my own 6 plants. That's not my first choice. My friends are brilliant growers. Some of them have been doing it for 30 and 40 years, legally, of course, I'm sure. But there's a huge amount of experience. They're good at it. I just soon go to the store. But if the government screws it up, not that they ever would, not that the government would screw anything up. I can't even imagine that. But if we stretch our imagination, at the end of the day, we can learn to grow. We all know that seeds are manna from heaven. I don't know of any state law with all the progress we're making. I don't know of any state law that says, oh, by the way, here's your Adam and Eve. Here's how to get your first seed. Here's how to get your first clone. I don't know of a single law that provides for any legal way to do that. So it's kind of like saying, well, you can use gold for making wedding rings, but you have to steal the gold because we're just saying you can make wedding rings.
Right.
Gold is your problem. Well, for us, it's Panama gold that's our problem.
Yeah.
Where do we legally get the seeds? Well, manna from heaven. Getting back to the city issue, which is what you're asking about. The cities are going from those that are really reasonable to those that are pretty reasonable. Yesterday, I met with 3 Metro Task Force narcotics agents. They wanted to inspect my client's grow in a warehouse. It was a small grow, and it may have gotten smaller after they expressed their interest. I'm not sure. But instead of coming in to arrest these guys, they were coming in to inspect it to explain to him that the zoning in that area did not allow even the 5 plants that were there when the narcs visited. So think about this. Narcs visit your client's grow with your client's consent, with his attorney present as a courtesy. They look at the plants and say, would you please explain to your client that when we come back to visit, and we'll schedule that with you, we really have to see 0 plants because that's the zoning. So for your client to grow his plants, he's got to check into his location better. Put that in perspective. It almost makes me speechless, and that's saying something.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy the twists and turns that legalization is taking. We thought it would be, just get it legalized and then we'll go from there. But it just seems like there's more crazy things happening after legalization. One topic I did want to bring up with you, and I don't know how much you can tell us about this, but how the lawyers in Colorado are able to work with clients that are in the legal marijuana business. I know you guys have like ethics standards and things, and it's still federally illegal. Is there any progress on that?
I am really glad you asked. I am thrilled, delighted. Think of some other good adjectives. I couldn't be happier. Our state bar organization, the Colorado Bar Association, has taken a position that still makes me smile. I went to the main people that run the organization and said, what do you think about a marijuana law committee? Because we have criminal and we have tax and we have family, but now we've got this thing that's going on in every city, every county in the state that deals with zoning and taxes. And I say land use, but that would be the same as zoning, so I would never say that. Family law, child protection, criminal, water law, and the list goes on. In my mind, a bar association committee that would put all those people at the same table was a good next step. So I passed it on to the decision makers, and they said to me, okay, we'll get back to you. I was absolutely certain that was the last I'd ever hear of it, forgetting for a moment that I knew these people, and these are not drop-the-ball people. About 2 weeks later, each of the 2 key people, the president of the Bar Association and the executive director, each of them came to me individually with big smiles saying, "It's a go." And I said, "What the joint are you talking about?" And they said, no, it's a go. And they're smiling, and I'm still sitting there thinking I just had a few hits of some really good dab and thinking what the joint's going on here. Finally, I was able to listen, and they said, here's the way it works. First, we form a special committee. We determine level of interest. If there's interest, then, if we want to, we can dub it a committee. We had a meeting of the special committee. We had over a dozen people there, the largest attendance ever, is what I'm told, for a bar committee special. Let's see what we have. We had our first meeting. We had 17 to 20 people, 5 or so. We had 17 to 20 lawyers. We had water lawyer, tax lawyer, family lawyer, pot lawyer. We had me at the table. We had one of the top people in the Marijuana Enforcement Division, the people that give out all the badges and licenses and grow licenses. We had their lawyer at the table. The person from the Bar Association that's our liaison, that keeps us organized, keeps us together. I'm probably not supposed to say this, so I will say it because I always step on my joint. She said it's one of the most exciting committees she's dealt with since she's started, and the largest attendance at the beginning of any new section that she has seen in her 17 years. The president of the Bar Association waved the sword, tapped me on each shoulder with his sword, and said, "You are now the Cannabis Law Committee."
Wow.
Well, actually what he said is, "You're now a committee." We sat down and had to figure out what to call ourselves. Cannabis Law Committee. The president appointed me, that's his job. He appointed me as chair. So my ego is really thrilled to say I am the chair of the first Bar Association Cannabis Law Committee on the planet.
That is amazing news. Thank you, Lenny, and thank you for breaking that news here on 420 Radio. That's all the time we've got for now, but we'll get you back on in a future episode to discuss what happens with the CLC. We're really looking forward to it. Thanks for telling us.
Likewise.
All right, folks, we got to go. Lenny Freelings with Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. Check him out at leap.cc. You can get a great speaker like him to your local event. They put a lot of truth to power at Leap, so please give them a call. We're going to take a break, give you the anti-drug PSA of the day, and when we come back from that, a radical rant on how the Oregon legislature thinks the people really didn't pay attention to the fine print in Measure 91. They got another thing coming. You're listening to The Russ Belville Show on 420radio.org.
You're tuned into The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio, the world's voice of marijuana legalization. At Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of The Russ Belville Show and 420 Radio. In the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
I don't believe it. Creeps. Creep kids! Driving in from the suburbs in their daddy's car to score, and then trying to beat me down on the price. Well, I don't cut my price for nobody! Especially for these rich creeps. I got good stuff. You want good stuff, you're gonna pay for it.
They'll be back.
Damn straight. They're trying to tell me they can take it or leave it. Did you see those little punks, man?
You're gonna be the first one who can take it or leave it.
Yeah. Driving the daddy's big car. Yeah, you know what I'd like to do to them? I'd like to rub their faces.
You know, they're so stupid they deserve to be burned.
Yeah. Ain't good for nothing.
Not good for something. Good for taking money off.
Hey, man. Got some good crack. Good stuff. What do you need?
This has been the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. To cure this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Russ Belville Show every weekday on 420radio.org. Adam Hand of Handmade Apparel produces quality custom designs for t-shirts, hats, and other apparel. Handmade Apparel is the official design shop for 420 Radio among many clients who rely on Adam Hand for everything from short-run custom projects to full-run clothing lines. Visit handmadeapparel.biz to browse the selection of handmade gear or to get a personal quote for your own designs. Handmade Apparel, a proud supporter of 420radio.org.
Handle the truth.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
You have offended my family.
Hey, this is great, man.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
I know nothing.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
We don't need no stinking budget.
Homosexuality, immorality in general.
How in the century you have slurred the meaning of the words we, the people.
Be warned, this is not your mother's marijuana.
You could ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
Welcome back, everyone. 46 and a half after the hour. And in the rant today, I was troubled by a story that I read in the Salem Statesman Journal. That's the newspaper in the capital city of Salem, Oregon here, where the legislature will be meeting shortly. And because of this story, I think it's vitally important for supporters of Oregon's Measure 91 to contact their state representative and senator and urge them to respect the will of the voters on Measure 91. Now, if you don't know who your legislator is in the state of Oregon, I've got a link that I'll post in the chat room right now to the Oregon legislature. It's oregonlegislature.gov/findyourlegislator, all one word, oregonlegislature.gov/findyourlegislator. You'll have a state senator and a state representative. And I sent a letter to them this morning urging them, once again, to respect the will of the voters. There are 4 basic areas where we have to fight right now. The League of Oregon Cities is lobbying hard at the legislature, along with other lobbyists, especially law enforcement, fighting us over 4 basic wants that they have that aren't in Measure 91 or are explicitly forbidden by Measure 91. First, they want the right of cities to establish local marijuana taxes. They secondly want the right of cities to establish bans on marijuana licenses without a vote of the people. They want the establishment of a blood draw nanogram per milliliter THC DUID limit, per se limit like Washington has. And they're even talking about abolishing or severely curtailing the Oregon medical marijuana program. One Democratic senator, a freaking Democrat, is already claiming that the people just wanted legalization and they don't care too much about Measure 91's fine print. And a Republican senator is already asking about abolishing the medical marijuana program. So we cannot let legalization get twisted up by these lobbyists, by law enforcement, and the legislature. We've got to speak up now. Here is what I wrote to my representatives and senator. Senator Dembro and Representative Smith Warner. My name is Russ Belville, and I'm a constituent of yours who worked very hard to see that Measure 91, our initiative to legalize marijuana, passed statewide. Now, I am very troubled by reports that the legislature is being lobbied by the League of Oregon Cities and others to subvert the will of the voters by making changes to Measure 91 that are completely inconsistent with Measure 91. In particular, Senator Lee Beyer is quoted in the Statesman Journal saying that November's vote in favor of marijuana meant Oregonians support recreational usage and not that they support the specific details of Measure 91. His assumption is that most voters, quote, didn't pay a heck of a lot of attention, end quote, to read all the fine print in the proposal. I assure you, the fine print in the proposal is exactly what Oregonians supported, for it is within that fine print that Oregon learned the lessons from the process of legalization taking place in Washington and Colorado. At least 70 Oregon cities passed local taxes on marijuana prior to Measure 91's passage. As you know, Measure 91 vests sole taxation authority over marijuana to the state alone and repeals and supersedes all previously passed local taxes. This is how we tax alcohol in Oregon. Yet cities believe they should be able to tack on an extra tax for the alleged costs of regulation that are already covered by Measure 91 and are never quantified by the cities. The low $35 per ounce state taxation is the lesson that we learned from the high taxation at multiple levels of production, processing, and retail among multiple city, county, and state jurisdictions in Washington and Colorado. In those two states, the price of black market and medical marijuana is far lower than the overtaxed recreational price, leading to pot dealers in the parking lots of the legal pot shops, undercutting the legal sellers. And that's exactly what we don't want at our Oregon pot shops. It's why we voted for Measure 91, as it is written. And the right of localities to ban pot shops and other licensees is also enshrined in Measure 91, but only through a vote of the people. This was the lesson we learned from the other two legalization states where city councils and county commissions banned pot shops of their own accord, ignoring the will of the voters in those locales that overwhelmingly supported legalization. Such bans also undercut the point of legalization by leaving the illegal pot dealers and the medical marijuana dispensaries as the only source for marijuana that all Oregon adults may legally possess and use. The lack of a per se THC DUID limit, such as Washington and Colorado have, is also a major reason that I and others supported Measure 91. Look, it's not that we don't want police stopping impaired drivers, regardless of the reason for that impairment. It's that there's no reliable testing for marijuana impairment through saliva, urine, or blood screening that is scientifically valid. Any limit the legislature would add would certainly convict innocent drivers of impairment for merely having high tolerances to marijuana. Most importantly, Measure 91 explicitly mentioned 3 times that it changed the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act in no way. Tens of thousands of patients and their caregivers would not have supported Measure 91 if it did change OMA. Yet Senator Fred Gerard is already asking, quote, can we do away with the Oregon medical marijuana program if we're going to legalize marijuana, end quote. There can be positive changes to streamline the production, processing, and retailing of marijuana to avoid too redundant supply chains. However, the right of patients to possess and cultivate more usable marijuana must be protected. There are some who absolutely cannot make do on the recreational limits of Measure 91. Furthermore, patients' rights to home manufacture of edibles and concentrates should be preserved, as patients often need those higher potency items for proper medicinal effect. I would warn you both not to assume the voters will be satisfied with any changes you make to Measure 91 because we're simply happy with legalization. Please pledge to me your support of the will and intent of 71% of Multnomah County voters who understood that Measure 91 was crafted to avoid the pitfalls of Colorado and Washington. Please do not support any local marijuana taxes. do not support allowing city councils and county commissions to ban without a vote of the people, do not support creating any unscientific per se DUID standard, and do not support any major changes to the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act. Thank you. Now, you can take that letter if you want to go. It's on, this entire letter is on my website at radicalruss.com. I'll post that in the chat room as well. You're more than welcome to copy it, adjust it, edit it any way you like to make it fit your voice. But this is something we must speak out on. We have seen that legislators and city councils and county commissioners in their own little fiefdoms, in their own little Machiavellian ways, try to twist legalization in Washington and to twist it in Colorado. We told you the story yesterday of how there is a vote now that's going to bring marijuana taxes in a couple of cities north of Denver as high as 23.75%. The taxes in Washington state are an effective 41% tax rate on these recreational businesses. These kind of taxation rates cannot stand, especially if they're going to run alongside a medical marijuana market where there won't be such taxation. One of the primary complaints that we have heard from opposition and major newspapers like the Oregonian over the past decade have been complaints about the medical marijuana system and complaints about people cheating it. Complaints about recreational users faking some pain, getting a recommendation so that they can go to dispensaries and be free from arrest for their use of marijuana. If that is truly a concern, that people are faking their way onto the medical marijuana program, then I guarantee you allowing these local taxes to stand is going to create more of that. I am currently a caregiver under the Oregon Medical Marijuana Program. I will no longer be a caregiver once July 15th happens, or July 1st, 2015 happens, because I will be legal. But if local taxes are allowed to remain, I will keep my caregiver card and I will shop at the medical marijuana dispensaries to avoid that local tax, and thousands of other people will do so too. If we are really serious about marijuana legalization, it is time to let it happen as the voters approved in Measure 91. The language of Measure 91 was not put together haphazardly. These were very well-informed, educated people in law enforcement, in science, in medicine, and in legislative politics that crafted this based on the legalization that already exists in Washington and Colorado. Great pains were taken to make sure that the legislation was written in such a way as to avoid the problems in Washington and Colorado. And yet, these legislators and these city lobbyists want to make the same mistakes over again. This claim that they need to have a 10% or a 20% or a 40% or a 50% marijuana tax in whatever city is always predicated on this idea that they have to deal with the excessive costs of the regulation. Scott Winkles from the League of Oregon Cities complains that when some neighbor calls the cops on another neighbor for the smell of their marijuana grow, it's not the state of Oregon that'll answer the call, it's the city of Portland or Fairfield or whatever city. They are trying to push through a regulatory tax on marijuana without ever quantifying what the cost of those regulations will be. And yet they never make the case that they need to have a local tax on alcohol, where I can show you every weekend the cost for these cities in DUI patrols, in breaking up fights, in responding to domestic violence, in dealing with people who've been overserved. I can show you so much cost at the city level for alcohol. But nobody's floating the idea at the legislature of allowing the cities and counties to establish local alcohol taxes, are they? And you know why? Because we have a huge lobby here in Oregon for alcohol, and those politicians would face a lot of blowback trying to locally tax alcohol. If they don't want to locally tax alcohol, then they've got no good basis for locally taxing marijuana that costs far less in regulation and enforcement. The only reason they're doing this is because they think they can. It's not established enough. There's not enough lobbyists. It's a tax they think they can get away with. Well, folks, they ain't going to get away with it. We will be at the legislature, all of us in the Oregon marijuana community, to guarantee that this does not happen. And if it does, we're going to raise holy hell. That's all the time we got. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned for Hour 2. Till next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant